Headspaces. The name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. You're watching another Headspace album review. If you don't know what the Headspace is, it's the Headspace with a 3 in it, because it's founded by 3 hip-hop practitioners from the south of Africa, Dakeza, Fritz Gorge, and myself, VJ. And what we do is we profile and cover African hip-hop as it grows in this beautiful continent. So if that's your cup of tea, then please subscribe. If you don't subscribe, then just watch this and see if you won't want to subscribe. I want to go into a project from an artist who has been making some interesting moves. The rap she delivers is something that is a testament to the journey of MCs as they discover who they're trying to be in an industry that so easily tries to pigeonhole you into already existing archetypes. So if you happen to be from the ghetto and you look a little gully, they'll be like, oh yeah, gangsta rap. If you happen to be somebody who appreciates the subtleties of the poeticism of rap, they'll be like, oh, backpacker, lyricist, you know. If you happen to be a woman and you rap, they'll figure out if you look good in a mini skirt, and if you do, then they'll figure out if you look good in a bathing suit, and if you do, then they'll try to get you to not wear anything at all. And I want to speak to the growth of MCs as they break out of these molds. Lex Lefoy, somebody who is easily able to rap. She wouldn't be where she was if she wasn't. She has a soft, tender, yet punchy spunk to her delivery. It could easily drown in the production, and sometimes it does. And I think what stands out the most is how much she fights for her presence to exist, because I speak a lot in these reviews about vocal dynamics and how when rappers understand the range of their own voices and how they're able to switch tonally and address the kind of emotional register that every song requires, then they're able to get into a place where they could easily switch between moments in a way that is so effortless and goes from formal rapping in the studio to something that sounds strikingly akin to conversation. Something that when you as a listener grasp into, you can't help but feel, God damn, this person is talking to me. And I think you get to that level when you're able to understand the strengths and of course the quote-unquote weaknesses of your voice. So the project that I'm reviewing from Lex, who's from Durban, shout out to KZN, is New World Daughter. Now I like that. I like that idea. I like the idea of rappers positioning themselves as novelties. I like when MCs are audacious enough to claim that they're bringing something that is on the pulse of the unseen, that attempts to discover the possibilities of where rap can go, especially in this continent where a lot of rappers just seem to easily be dancing to the tune of American tropes. Now, New World Daughter is a project of 11 joints which attempt to kind of spread out Lex Lefoy's femininity and of course humanity in ways that really go beyond, again, this easy archetype of just being sexy. I mean, of course, people tend to be good looking and sometimes they aren't, but if you're gonna cash in on that as the whole package to your musical development, it's gonna cripple you. And I think Lex Lefoy does something that a lot of rappers need to learn from. She puts her best foot first, and she does that in a way that positions her as a rapper first. She is bubbly, and a lot of people say that, and it's vague to a point where I don't even like the word, but I'm gonna use it because a bubble floats in a way that is moved by the current of the wind, but it flows so high that at some point you can't even grasp it. The spectrum of light shines on it in a way where you're able to see majestic colors and you feel as if right in the bubble is a universe of opportunity. But at some point, because of the density of the bubble in itself, it's only made to do one thing. It's only made to eventually rise and blow up in a haze of splashiness. And that could be positive, that could be negative, depending on how you look at it. It could be viewed as being so infectiously attractive that you rise fast but you blow quick. Or it can be seen as being so commanding that you're able to address a level of influence that spreads into a firework-like influence that surpasses even you. So I think she's aiming for the latter here, and she does it in ways that are metaphorically attached to the idea of sexiness and the idea of the objectified woman, but lyrically she plays into a lane where she's just talking about how dope she is. She's talking about her experiences. She's doing what rappers do, which is embellish the story of why they are better than any other MC. And I think she does that really well. The mixing doesn't take advantage of her soft voice. I think there are moments in songs, in fact every song, but in particular Gold in the Mouth, which is one of the shining moments because it's playful, it's enticing, it's sultry, and it's a clear translation of her personality, but it's so one-dimensional that you can't help but feel like it has more potential to be something greater. Pauses, delays, and different kind of tricks that are made to push the vocal presence of the artist forward could have really changed this album drastically. They could have elevated my ultimate rating up probably 3 notches. But I think the beats, as banging, infectious, even though they're tropey and they kind of fall into the typical mark, they're beats you could easily find in the ecology of what is termed club music in today's rap atmosphere. But the one-dimensionality of them kind of creates a very limited replay value, and I think not even Lex Lefoy's lingering presence on songs is enough to kind of get these songs to go beyond a 1 to 2 month listen. And as a result, you don't want to do that to yourself, especially if you're in this position where you're still kind of just still trying to tell your story. You don't want to imprison yourself in songs that are too limited sonically to be replayed over and over again. You want to focus on how to heighten your voice as it moves along with the production. So I really think that the overall engineering failed her because it, as clear as it is, it doesn't allow for the voice to take charge. In many instances, because of how soft, even as sharp as the way she registers in her tone, she speaks with a level of delicacy that doesn't allow for the actual instrumentation to sit beneath her. So I think she easily slips in between the moments, and because of that, she's carried by the beat in many instances. Now, a song like Book of Flight is an example of one of the other annoyances that I have with this album. Again, there's a tendency for artists to undermine the simple poetry of the mundane by thinking that a good hook is plain empty repetition. Book of Flight is as corny as mini meal, because what it does, it just kind of keeps rehashing this phrase in ways that don't really speak to anything other than catchiness. And I think it fails to address the idea that it's not just in being catchy that you capture people, it's in understanding how to speak to them in phrases that encapsulate their aspirations and desires poetically. There's a poetry to this hook shit. There really is a simple poetry to the seemingly ignorant, repetitive songs that you hear constantly. And where that lies is that it lies in listening to how the collective imagination of people gravitates to certain words, and how those words create certain sentences that register in their minds the most, but also the things people say when they're really in that emotion. So as a result, it fails to really give those kinds of renditions. And it kind of sits in this place where it's what you think, it's what she thinks people would say or sing along to. It isn't necessarily trying to understand how to write a hook that epitomizes how somebody feels at that moment and having them relate deep enough for it to sing along, because it just feels like the theme song to their emotions. So ultimately, because of the one-dimensionality of the engineering, because of how sometimes the hooks tend to fall into the banal, the project is a shell of great ideas that are let down by the lack of dynamics and fitting features, because the features that are here vocally don't carry Lex and work with her in ways that make the tracks better. Sometimes they make the tracks worse. So I think ultimately what it is Lex standing on her own and showing us that even in the midst of difficultly narrowing production, even in the midst of struggling to write good hooks, she's able to still punch beyond these things, because there's the potential for a really great MC here. She understands all of her dynamics. She understands how to be emotionally deep. She understands how to tap into the originality of her own style. She understands basically the whole 5 principles. You know what they are. I'm not gonna fucking say them to you all over again. So ultimately for me, it's a 5.5 out of 10. It is pretty average, but there is a glimmer that speaks to the critical but stableness of Lex Lefoy's growth as a rapper. And ultimately, I just want to say these projects are not to be buried under the ground. They are the way in which artists can look back and see how to grow. So shout out to Lex Lefoy, shout out to KZN, shout out to great hip hop, and shout out to learning how to grow in the face of critique. These reviews are about understanding the vision of the artist, understanding the climate that they operate in, and as a result, how that relationship plays into whether or not they execute this well or not. So a lot of people be coming back on the comment section like, that's what you think, you're a hater. My people, we sit down, I sit down and respect the history, the creative journey, and ultimately the industry value of an artist, and take all of those facets to give an ultimately diverse description of what any musical artifact attempts to do. It attempts to speak to its own identity and hopefully make some money out of it. So if you try to weave the two together, you're trying to speak to authenticity in a climate that says be like everything else. So it's pretty much a contradiction. But great artists know how to do this by learning what are the key elements that are in the tropes that they can extract to create a new recipe. So ultimately, whether this project or any other project, it's all love. Critique is an act of love. So I want to give a shout out to those who love the game as much as we do. And again, if this is your kind of content, please subscribe. And yeah, we keep growing, and growing. Shout out to you.